want to cover tree staking. Now, when you plant a new tree, typically the size that we're using are, at least in Northern California, they're called 15-gallon containers. And the diameter of the trunk of those trees often is only 1 to 2 inches in diameter. So we stake these trees to keep them stable until they get strong enough to survive on their own. This is a good example of a typical tree staking. Some people use a single stake, and I don't recommend it, and let me tell you why. By using two, you have equal support from two sides, and the tree can still move in the wind. So that's what you want. Trees get strong in their trunk by callousing off. And it's kind of like working out at the gym. They need to move and flex in the wind so that their tissue develops calluses and stiffens so that it can resist that on its own. When you first plant a tree, typically they have a stake right up on their trunk that needs to be removed so that this tree can flex in the wind. A lot of people, when they plant trees, they leave the stake on there. I can see doing that if you have a very flimsy stake and you need to let the caliper on the tree get a little thicker. But once that tree trunk will not flex, if it's fairly straight, then you need to remove that nursery stake, we call it, so that it can start strengthening and stand on its own. That said, the question becomes is, when do you remove the stake? And I'll get up on this tree in a second and show you how I test for that. But typically 2 years is long enough. And what I do is I remove them right as the trees drop their leaves going into fall if I've got a deciduous tree. Reason being is then there's not a wind load of the leaves, and if the wind starts pushing on the tree but it's bare, it's not going to create a problem because there's not enough resistance for it to really be an issue. That way, as the tree's putting on its winter wood and it gets harder, that's the stronger, harder, stiffer wood in a tree. Then as it develops that for the winter, it's doing it without the support of the tree stakes, and that's how it's going to develop a much stronger winter wood the year you release it. So I recommend doing that around 2 years, but the way I test for that is I essentially see, does this tree feel like it's able to stand on its own? So I come in and I try and move the tree and see what kind of support it has, and it has plenty of resistance. At this point, these tree stakes aren't doing anything to support this tree. So it's late summer. For this tree, what I would do is I would come in, and as soon as it drops its leaves, I would remove that tree stake and let it stand on its own. And then you keep an eye on it, obviously, but typically if it's got that much resistance already with that, even with the tree stake on, you can tell whether they're getting the support they need or whether they even need it anymore. So that is tree stakes. The other thing you'll see there is they've got two ties, one on each side, so that thing can move side to side and back and forth. And that's the way we would typically put those ties on there. Just a little detail, about 2 inches, 3 inches above where the ties are nailed on, we cut those tree stakes off so that they're not in danger of rubbing up against the lateral branches of the tree. And I recommend that. You see up there where that one stake is up with the lateral branches. Many times as a tree moves in the wind, that branch gets all scarred up and ruins it. So by taking those stakes down where they're not going to rub the lateral branches, you avoid that problem. Now this is a good example of where the tree stake should have been removed by the maintenance company some time ago. This trunk is now 8 inches in diameter, and the tree is pulling the tree stakes over, and it's wrapped very tightly. It's you see this whole situation up in here. So it's something I see a lot. For whatever reason, maintenance guys don't seem to include this as part of their maintenance a lot of times, but you should maybe put that as a specification if you're a commercial landscape architect about when the tree stakes are to be removed. And if you're a residential designer, same thing, is just be aware of that. You don't want these stakes on here any longer than they need to be, and they're unsightly, but they're not helping anything at this point.